Okay, so this time we're talking about a decimal place value. What's a decimal? Alyssa, what's a decimal?
It's the number that comes after. It's a small dot.
It's a dot.
So a decimal point is a dot. That is right. But what is the actual decimal numbers? What is that? Hundreds, tenths, thousandths. It's actually part of a whole. Okay, it's not a whole number, okay, because it's on the right side of the decimal. So a decimal is a piece of something. So we're going to go ahead and start on page 121. So you can see there at number 1, it says, look at the place value models for whole numbers. Write the missing factor in each equation to show how ones, tens, hundreds, and thousands are related. So we're talking about whole numbers right now. We're not talking about decimals just yet. So if you look at those pictures, you have 1,000 base 10 block, which we don't ever deal with. You have 100 base 10 block, a 10, and a 1. Okay? So for 1,000, so we're going to start at 1,000.
So it's basically
What times 100 equals 1,000? 10. 10 times 100 equals 1,000.
Don't you need to write it the other way around?
It would make more sense to me if you wrote it the other way around, but I don't know why they wrote that one that way. Yes.
Isn't it basically where, like on 10 equals 1 times 1, don't you do whatever 1 times 1 equals 10?
Yeah, so it's basically this. So they wrote it the wonky way. I would write it 100 times 10. That's how I would write it. I would write it with my answer last because that makes more sense to me.
Are we allowed to do that?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
'Cause I don't
It doesn't matter. Either way you write it, it means the exact same thing. Okay? All right, so let's look at the next one, the 100 spot. Blank times 10 equals 100. 10 again. Next one, blank times 1 equals 10. And then you just have 1 on the end. Okay? So, what do you notice that's the same in that? They're all multiplied by 10. That is right. They're all multiplied by 10. So, I'm going to show you a little trick. So, let me add. You ready for my trick? Okay, so somebody give me a number between 0 and 9. 7. 7 is my number. Okay? Now, there's going to be 2 options for all of these. You're either going to multiply by 10 or you're going to divide by 10. Okay, those are your options. Multiply by 10, divide by 10. So, when you multiply by 10, okay, so we're just going to use 7 as our example. 7 times 10 equals what?
70.
What did I do? I added a 0. I added a 0. Now I'm going to use 70. 70 times 10 equals what? 700. What did I do again? I added another 0 to my 70. Now I'm going to use 700. 700 times 10 equals what? 7,000. What did I do? 7,000 times 10 equals what? 70,000. I added another 0. So if you see the pattern here, you add a 0 every single time. Okay? Now, that's when you're dealing with whole numbers. Okay? That's when you're dealing with whole numbers. That's your numbers in front of your decimal place. Okay? It's a little bit different when you're dealing with decimals. Okay? But we'll talk about that here in just a second. Okay? All right. So, everybody good so far? So, on these, when you're multiplying times 10, add a 0. Add a 0. Add a 0.
How do you know when you have to divide?
It'll tell you to divide.
I thought you had to like figure it out.
We're going to talk about it. We're getting there. All right, so let's look at number 2. It says, write the missing numbers in the equations below these place value models for decimals to show how hundredths, tenths, and ones are related. Okay? So, blank times 0.1 equals 1. 10. Blank times 0.01 equals 0.1. And then you have 0.01. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing that I just did. Okay, we're going to do the same thing I just did, except we're going to use decimals this time.
Are they always from
Okay.
10?
They always multiply by 10 or divide by 10.
So then there's no way to do 10 sometimes.
It depends. Okay, so somebody give me another number. 9. Okay, so we're going to start with 0.009. Does anybody know what that says? 9 thousandths. Okay, now remember at the beginning of the year we just did hundredths. We went 2 places. Now in this chapter we do 3 places, so we're doing up to hundredths. Okay, so 0.009, which is 9 thousandths, times 10. Now all you have to do is move your decimal over 1 spot. So I have 0.009 and I multiply times 10. I move my decimal point over 1 spot, so that becomes 0.09. Okay, so when you have a decimal and you multiply by 10, you move the decimal 1 spot to the right. Okay, so now we have 0.09 times 10. Again, I move my decimal place 1 spot. I have 0.9 or 9 tenths. So you're taking away one of those zeros from your decimals. Okay? So we went from 9 thousandths to 9 hundredths to 9 tenths. So now if I do 9 tenths times 10, it becomes 9. I move my decimal to the right, and I get 9.
I didn't know decimal could go behind me.
You can move decimal anywhere you want to.
Or just make the number.
It just makes the whole number. Okay, so we go from 9 hundredths or 9 thousandths to 9 hundredths to 9 tenths to 9. If I were to multiply that times 10 again, what would I get? 9 times 10? 90. Don't think too much into this. If it's a whole number, multiply it like normal. Okay? All right. Let's look at this one, number 3. So it says, look at your equations in problems 1 and 2. Explain how the value of each place compares to the value of the place to its right. So let's look at number 1 first. Number 1 first. So what number did we write in those blanks? So it's 10 times that number, right? What about number 2? What number did we write in the blank? 10. So it's 10 times that number. Yes, ma'am. Take a pencil. So how are they related to each other? How do they compare? 10 times. So it is 10 times the value of the number to its right. So if I multiply 1 times 10, I get 10. If I multiply 2 times 10, I get what? 20. So it's 10 times the number to its right. Okay, we good so far? Maybe? Hopefully. Hopefully this makes it a little clearer. Number 4. Fill in the blanks in the diagram to show how the values of the numbers change from row to row in the table. Extend the pattern to fill in the top and the bottom rows. Okay, so let's look at the middle first. Everybody see where the just 1 is? We have 1 right in the middle. Now, if you go up, you're looking at the left-hand side. So the left-hand side is going up. The right-hand side is going down. Okay, so left-hand side, we're multiplying by 10. Right-hand side, we're dividing by 10. Okay, everybody see that in your table? Left-hand side, you're multiplying by 10 and going up. Right-hand side, you're dividing by 10 and going down. All right, so let's start filling in these numbers. All of these blanks over here on this side are going to be times 10. And all of these blanks on this side are divided by 10. So times 10 on the left, divided by 10 on the right.
Do we have to write that divided sign?
Yep. Okay, so let's fill in. We've got 2 numbers missing. We have our top number and our bottom number. So let's do our top number first, okay, because it's going up. It would be 1,000 because 100 times 10, add another 0, you get 1,000. The bottom would be 1,000th. That's supposed to be a 0 because you're dividing by 10. So we talked about decimals when you multiply by 10. Okay, you move your decimal to the right. When you divide by 10, you move your decimal place to the left because it gets smaller. Okay, because think about when you multiply and divide, think about what we just did. We just talked about multiplication and division. When you multiply, what happens to your answer? It gets bigger. When you divide, what happens to your answer? It gets smaller. So this is the same thing. When you multiply, your answer should be bigger. When you divide, your answer should be smaller. Okay? Hopefully you know that 1,000th is less than 100th. Okay? Hopefully you know that already. All right, so let's keep going. Okay, so go ahead, and I have another table for some reason. I'm not really sure. But number 5 says, what happens to the position and value of the digit 1 when you multiply by 10? What happens to that digit? It goes up, and it becomes what? 1. When you multiply 1 times 10, what happens? 1 times 10 is what it's asking. 1 times 10 becomes 10. So it goes up. Remember, multiply, it gets bigger. Okay, so you could say it gets bigger or it goes up. Number 6, what happens to the position and value of the digit 1 when you divide by 10? It goes down or it gets less. And it becomes 1/10 right there. So it is 1/10 of what it was. When I say that, 1/10, I know that's a fraction, right? Everybody knows that's a fraction. You've read it as a fraction for as long as you've been doing fractions. That also says 1 divided by 10. Okay? That is the same thing. That also says 1 divided by 10.
When you do division, it's a decimal. When you do multiplication, it's a whole number.
Not all the time. Okay? So, on your bell work, there were things that said it is 1/10 times whatever. That's the same thing as dividing by 10. So, anytime you see these and it says 1/10 of something, you're dividing by 10.
So what's it divided by 10?
Hmm?
So what if it like 1/10 divided by 10?
No. Whatever number it gives you divided by 10. Okay? So 1/10 of the fraction is the same thing as saying 1 divided by 10. We good so far? I hope so. All right, next one. Number 7. What do you think is the value of the digit 1 in the number you wrote in the last row of the table? So what that's asking you, so look at your last box on your table, and we wrote 0.001. That's asking you, what is the place value for that 1? Thousandths. It is in the thousandths place. Thousandths place. Okay, your bell work had some of that in it also. What value is this digit? What value is this digit? Okay? All right. Let's keep going. Number 8. I've already said this, but I'm going to read it again. Dividing a number by 10 is the same as finding 1/10 of the number. So use the phrase 1/10 of or the phrase 10 times to complete each statement about 1,000th. Okay? So 1,000th is blank 100th. Remember, thousandths are less than hundredths. So is it 1/10 of or 10 times? 1/10 of. Because this is the same thing as saying 0.01. Nope. Wrong sign. 0.01. Can't write with my eraser either. Divided by 10. That's the same thing. When you see 1/10 of, that's the same thing as divided by 10. Okay? How about 100th is blank 1/1000th? 10 times. Because 100 times 10 gives me what? 1,000th. All right, number 9. So in which number does the digit 5 have a greater value? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to pull out your place value chart that is in your dry erase packet. Get your marker out. So you are going to use your place value chart. You are going to write 0.05 and 0.005 on your place value chart. So here's going to be my place value chart. Okay, so that's going to be ones, decimal, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. All right, so it says my first number is 0.05, so I'm going to write 0.05 in my place value chart. My second number is 0.005. Now, remember at the beginning of the year, we looked at these. We looked at place value charts. We looked at comparing decimals up to hundredths. Now, remember, first step, look at my ones place. Can I compare those? Why not? Because they're both zeros. I can't compare zeros. Move over to my tenths place. Can I compare those? Why not? Because they're the same. They are both 0. Move over to my hundredths place. Can I compare those? Yes, I can. Which number's bigger? 5 is bigger. So 5 is greater than 0. So I know that 0.05 is greater than 0.005. So 5 hundredths is greater than 5 thousandths. That ringing a bell? I hope so. That's your answer. This bottom part right here is your answer to number 9. I know that 5 is bigger than 0. So 5 hundredths is greater than 5 thousandths.
I just stabbed myself with my pencil on that. Spicy
All right.
pencil.
Anybody have any questions? All right, I'm going to stop this.